Hi, welcome back. Today I have another tutorial video for you. It's been a long time. I'm going to show you how to make this Picket cover. We're going to be making this Han Coco one in the video, but you can make anything you want to make, and yeah. So this is my Leave It one. He's kind of dirty. I took him to the Stray Kids concert both days, and he got a lot of compliments. A lot of people asked me where I bought it, and when I told them I made it, they were like, whoa, the clips are not included. They were just part of my outfit for the concert. To make your own Leave It, the most important thing that you're gonna need on hand is your Picket itself. The Picket you use kind of decides like how much fabric you're gonna need, placement and everything. So if you can have your Picket on hand, I got these mini Pickets from Daiso. They had a bunch of different sizes, so if you want to make your own, Daiso definitely has a lot. I'm sure you could find it on Amazon as well, or you can use your official Pickets if you have them. A lot of the official ones are pretty big, so you know, if you want to do a project that big, go for it. You're also going to need your fabric of choice. I'm using felt. He is made out of felt, so this is how it looked like, but you can also use cotton. If you want, you can even use paper. I don't know how sturdy it's gonna be, but if you just want it for like decorative purposes, I think that would be great as well. Do as you please. If you're using fabric or felt or whatever, you're gonna need 2 layers of your base color. Depending on your choice of fabric or paper, the materials you're gonna need to put everything together will vary. If you use fabric or paper, you can use glue. That's the easiest way to attach everything. You could get fabric glue, hot glue, whatever you have. If you're like me and you kind of want everything to be a little more secure, you're gonna need some sewing materials. So you're gonna need some kind of thread, sewing needles, some scissors. For this clear part of the Picket holder, you're gonna need some kind of plastic. So this is the plastic thing I'm using for these projects. I just bought it yesterday. This is clear tablecloth covering, protecting thing. I got this whole thing for $5. If you can't find like the clear tablecloth, you can also try to look for like shower curtains maybe. For this original Leave It one, I had bought a bag and it came in a plastic Ziploc thing, and I just cut it out and I used that. So you can really use whatever you have on hand. And then the last thing you're gonna need is something to close up your Picket backing. I have these buttons. I don't know where I got these from. They're to hold your Picket in place when you put it in so it's not flying around. If you want, I think you can use Velcro. I feel like Velcro would work. They sell little Velcro dots at like Michael's. You do need this or else the Picket will not stay in your cover case. Or if you don't plan to take the Picket out, you can always just literally glue the Picket into the case. That's the material. I think that's everything. So let's begin. The first thing you're gonna need to do is kind of sketch out what you want the Picket to look like. I'm just gonna use a piece of paper. Every Picket is probably gonna be a different size, so you kind of have to work with what you have. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna trace my Picket. I'm gonna leave a little bit of the stick in the paper as well. We're going to trace it. Oh my goodness. Now that it's traced, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna sketch out a bigger outline around the Picket for the shape that I want. So I'm gonna go with a circle because I'm probably gonna make one of my little buggy boys again. I'm only doing half because then I'm gonna fold it in half and cut the other side out. And I'm gonna cut it out. When you're making your template, put down your little pins that you're going to be putting just to make sure that you have enough space between the Picket and the bottom. As you can see, I don't, so I'm going to cut mine a little bit bigger just so when the Picket goes in, it fits. So I'm going to use a scrap that I cut off to finish my design. I'm going to add ears to him, play around with it, see how I like it. And then I'm going to tape everything together and we shall be back. To make sure I'm keeping it symmetrical, I just place one ear on first and then I'm going to turn it around, add a little piece of tape on the back. I'm going to lay it right on top, fold it down the halfway mark that I already folded earlier, and perfect. After you have your template, you're gonna wanna cut around it. I have this erasable marker thing, and I'm just gonna trace it. All right, so this is what he looks like, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna cut this out. Okay, so now that I have it cut out, I'm gonna go ahead and start designing the face. So I'm actually gonna use my scrap paper and this template to figure out the face to make sure it's looking how I want it to look. So I'm gonna work on this, and then once everything is figured out, I'm going to sew everything onto him. Creative freedom, so you do what you wanna do. I drew directly on my template that I made, and after I draw it on, I take my scrap paper and then I just trace over the drawing I made. This one is kind of light, but I can still see. I lied, I can't see. It looks something like that. I'll cut around. You can always use tools. If you have like a compass to make a circle, you can use that. If you want to design it on like a digital tablet, print it out and then cut it out, you can also do that. And I go ahead and I label it as well. So this is big eye. And then I'll use these to cut them out of my felt pieces. Yeah, that's just a little piece of advice for drawing things out. Alrighty, my next piece of advice. So I like to add little dabs of glue to the pieces. Once I have the spot figured out, I just press it in and I'm sewing. Everything kind of stays in place for a little bit, and then I can just go in and secure it. So I have finished with my face. We're gonna move on to this back panel. So the first thing you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna take your front panel and you want to make a duplicate of just the shape. I do this after I finish sewing because sewing sometimes scrunches the fabric in a little, so it kind of warps it. So I'm just gonna be using some white. I'm just gonna place it right on top. I'm gonna grab my marker and I'm just gonna trace it. So I cut out my duplicate of my base. We're now gonna cut out our plastic. So for the plastic, I'm not gonna cut the exact shape of this yet. You're gonna want a piece of plastic that covers up the whole base shape. Alrighty, so now I have my plastic cut out. It is bigger than the actual thing I need, and I'm not gonna cut it down until after I finish this step, because as I sew, it might move around a little bit. So now I'm gonna take the Picket that I'm using and I'm gonna place it on the piece. When you're sewing down this plastic, you do not wanna sew it all the way around. I sewed it only until here on both sides. That way the Picket has space to go in. If you sew too much, then you might not have as much like wiggle room to get the Picket in. So you do have to play around with this part. I'm gonna hold my Picket where I would put it, and I'm just gonna pull it straight down. And I see that right here is about the widest my Picket gets. So I'm gonna wanna sew to around this point here. So I'm just gonna mark it with my marker, just right on top. So I still have some wiggle room. So this is where I'm gonna start. I'm gonna sew all the way around. I'm not gonna do the ears. If you wanna sew around the ears, you absolutely can. For my leave it, I kind of just kept the ears blank and I just sewed this little circle here. So I'm just gonna have my thing like this. And I just do, I guess it would be like a straight stitch, but this backside is gonna be hidden. It can be as ugly as it is inside. We're hiding this later anyways. So I'm actually going to use some binder clips to help me keep this plastic in place. So I'm going to put this binder clip here and I will try to show you what the stitches look like. My needle in, then I'm going to move up or left in my case. I'm going to push the needle in again. I'm going to pull it all the way through. From the back, I'm going to push forward a little more. I'm going to pull it through. I have a little gap here. I'm going to go backwards, back to that same hole that I previously went through, and I'm going to have it there. And I'm just going to keep doing that all the way around. So move forward a little bit, and then go back. Move forward a little bit, and move back. If you want, you can go up the ears. I'm not gonna do that because the ears don't need the plastic. So I'm just gonna keep going in a little circle all the way back to my next point. I'm gonna do that and I'll be back. Alrighty, so I finished sewing around the amount that I was planning to do. I'm just gonna slide my Picket in and kind of see if it looks good. If there's too much of like a gap, I can add a few more stitches on both sides. I think I'm happy with this. I could add one more stitch on each side, but that just feels like a little extra. So now from here, I'm gonna go in with my scissors and I'm going to now cut around the shape. Fold down the ears and I'm gonna follow the stitches. And there we have the finished plastic part. Next step is going to be adding your button or your Velcro or whatever you're going to be using to seal up your Picket cover. So for this, I'm going to insert my Picket. So usually you would want to do it right on the sides of where the stick would be because it'll give it the best stability. But if you don't have enough space, you can do a little more on the side as well if that has more space. It just might leave some wiggle room for your Picket. So I would recommend doing it as close as you can to the stick. So I'm actually going to use a Sharpie and I'm going to add 2 dots. One here and one here so I know where to sew in my buttons. So I'm going to do that real quick. I'm going to sew it to the plastic as well as the inside piece. If we put them in, there it is. It's not going to come out, so it does the job. To hide them, I cut out 2 tiny little pieces of felt. I'm going to crazy glue this on because I'm kind of over this part. So I'm going to add some crazy glue. You can use, I don't even think this is going to stick. Maybe I should have used hot glue, but we'll see. If it sticks, it sticks. If it doesn't, I'll use another method. I'll pull out the hot glue gun even though I don't want to. Stick to this, not to my hand. The last step is to sew this to your base. We're gonna flip it over. We have a lot of little sewing parts here on our base. If you sewed, you're gonna have a lot of sewing bits there showing. And now we're just gonna sew everything together. So if you want, you can do the same stitch we used here for the Picket if you're sewing. If you're gluing, you can glue, 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 press down. I'm going to use a blanket stitch. It is totally up to you what you want to do. You can Google some different stitches. You can use a whip stitch. You can use whatever this is called. You can use a blanket stitch. You got it. Making sure that I am not sewing down more of the plastic. When I sew mine, I sew into the same holes when I'm doing this part, and then I sew around, sew into the same holes, sew around, and then once I get here, I make sure I start only stitching the felt layers and not the plastic. I leave the plastic alone. As you can see, I did my last blanket stitch, so from here, instead of poking through all 3 layers, I'm just gonna fold this back a little bit. I'm just gonna grab these 2 layers and poke through these 2, just like that, and continue my way around. Alrighty, and a few days later, we are finished. So this is what the finished product looks like. And take our Picket, slide it right in, and there he is. super cute. Here are the two that I've made. Get creative, you could do whatever you want to do. If you make it, please tag me on Instagram. I would love to see what you make. Bye bye.